Today on the show, we are going to be reacting to ESPN NFL Draft Analyst Field Yates' latest mock draft after Super Bowl 59, and now the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft Order is now officially set, with the Kansas City Chiefs sitting at number 31 overall, and the Philadelphia Eagles, this year's Super Bowl champions, sitting at number 32. Before we get into the content today and react to all 32 picks in Field Yates' latest mock draft, you guys can go give me a follow on X if you haven't already, at Jack_Sperry. I'm putting out a bunch of great draft content on there every single day, guys. Film analysis, positional rankings, it's all going to be going up on my X account before we put up a video here on YouTube. So make sure you guys give me a follow at Jack_Sperry. And with that, let's get into the first pick of Field Yates' newest mock draft, which he has Travis Hunter, the wide receiver cornerback hybrid out of Colorado, going to the Tennessee Titans. Now, my thoughts on this one, guys, is that, Tennessee's GM is on the record saying we're not going to pass on a generational talent. Now, the question is, do they see either Abdul Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State, or Travis Hunter as a generational talent? Now, you might say, hey, man, we haven't seen a guy that can play wide receiver and cornerback at the level that Travis Hunter can play those two positions, enter the NFL draft arguably ever. So maybe they do feel like Travis Hunter is that special generational type of talent that they just can't pass on. I could certainly see them doing this, but also Tennessee needs a quarterback, so you could certainly see them taking Cam Ward or maybe even Shedeur Sanders as well if they find the quarterback that they really like. We put out an entire scouting report on Travis Hunter, why I think he is the best player in the 2025 NFL draft class. If you guys want to see my full scouting reports, both on him as a wide receiver and as a cornerback, and just tell you just how special this young man is, you guys can check out the full video. I'll put the link to that one in the comments and description of today's show, and I'll put the chip in the top right. So take a guess for me down there in the comment section. Who are the Titans going to take at number 1 overall in Green Bay, Wisconsin on night 1 of the 2025 NFL draft? Will it be Travis Hunter? Will it be Abdul Carter? Will it be Cam Ward? Will it be somebody else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time, but let me know who's going to be the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. The number 2 overall here, another team that could potentially take a quarterback. Field Yates has them going edge rusher here with Penn State, Darth Vader here, Abdul Carter, who is an absolute freak of nature. The burst and the explosiveness that this kid plays with is out of this world, and he has the opportunity to be a real impact day one in the National Football League, and especially now that the Cleveland Browns could be moving off of Myles Garrett via a trade this offseason, replacing him with a guy like Abdul Carter as the true number 1 edge rusher in this room could certainly make a lot of sense for Cleveland. That is, if they don't want to take one of the quarterbacks. Then at number 3 overall here with the New York Giants, Field Yates has the first quarterback coming off the board, and it is Cam Ward out of Miami. I think that Ward is clearly the best quarterback in this year's draft class. I have a nice little tier ranking there, a little bit of a dip between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I do have some concerns about Sanders in terms of anticipation and arm strength. Those are two things that don't mix very well usually in the National Football League, but Cam Ward actually does throw with some nice anticipation. I like his mental processing chops, and I like his playmaking chops as well. A really good pocket presence. So I think if he ends up being available here for the New York Giants at number 3, I think he would end up being the pick. The number 4, this is one I disagree with here with Field Yates. Now, obviously, New England needs offensive line help. Everybody knows that, and Will Campbell is the best overall offensive lineman in this year's class. So you can take him maybe as an offensive tackle to start, but maybe he kicks in to guard later on in his NFL career. I certainly wouldn't say this is a bad pick, but I certainly think there are better players on the board at this point, at least in my opinion, at more higher positions of value. That is, if Campbell does end up playing guard, which I do project him as a guard. I would love Tedoror McMillan out of Arizona to pair with Drake May there in New England. In my opinion, guys, the Patriots just got to take the best player available, but hey, Will Campbell's a hell of a player. He's going to be a big-time player in this league for a long time along the offensive line, so you can't sneeze at this one too much. Then number 5, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, a really special interior pass rusher. And as we just saw with the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Carter this past year, guys, if you can get a truly special interior pass rusher on your team, that can be big time, because even the best quarterbacks in the world, if you can get quick interior pressure on them, it completely blows up the play, it completely blows blows up the offense. And, Mason Graham is certainly somebody as a true three technique coming out of the Wolverines, can be an impact on day one on the interior for Jacksonville. The number 6, Shedeur Sanders, the second quarterback coming off the board here in Field Yates' mock draft. And Sanders is somebody, like I said, I do have some red flags on. I currently have a late first-round grade on Shedeur Sanders. There are things to like about Shedeur's game, but I do think he's a little bit overrated. But this is the perfect pick for the Las Vegas Raiders because they love to pick up overrated quarterbacks, right? So obviously he's got the Tom Brady connection. I think if Shedeur Sanders is here at number 6, I think there's a decent chance that he is. I think the Las Vegas Raiders end up taking him. The number 7, Mykel Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. Long arms, long levers. The New York Jets, they already have some pretty darn good edge rushers in that room, but Mykel Williams is certainly somebody that could add to that defense. Of course, Aaron Glenn, their new head coach, is a defensive-minded guy, so might be looking to add to the defense. The number 8, Jalen Walker, crazy athlete, can play off-ball linebacker, or if you want him to play as an edge rusher in a 3-4 scheme, as an outside linebacker and like a true edge rusher, he can do that as well. Phenomenal blitzer. The way that I would love to see a team use Jalen Walker, though, is kind of like in a Frankie Louvu role where he's technically an off-ball linebacker, but they blitz him a ton there in Washington. Jalen Walker is the athletic kind of freak that I would want to see play that kind of role in today's versatile defensive culture in the National Football League. The number 9, Shedeur McMillan, the receiver out of Arizona, comes off the board to the New Orleans Saints. In my opinion, guys, Shedeur McMillan looks like A.J. Green, and prime A.J. Green at that. He just moves so fluidly at his size. You just don't see that very often. He's a crisp route runner. He plays with phenomenal hands as well, and he's so underrated after the catch. A lot of people want to say he's Drake London or Mike Evans, but he's so much more fluid than those guys. I have him as my number 1 wide receiver, and it's not particularly close. I think he's a special player, and I think he goes off the board much higher than number 9, in my opinion. Number 10, Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas, coming off the board here to Chicago. Now, obviously, the new head coach there in Chicago, Ben Johnson, built one of the best offensive lines in the game there in Detroit. He's going to try to do the same here in Chicago. So if they do end up sticking and picking here at number 10, I do think it will be an offensive tackle of some sort. Number 11, another offensive lineman comes off the board here for the 49ers, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Really liked his film before he got injured this past year, but because of the injury, he might not be the first tackle taken, but the film is just as good as any other tackle in this year's class, at least in my opinion. San Francisco could certainly use that. Number 12, we got Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. Long arms, extremely physical, sticky in man coverage, and good zone instincts as well. No matter what kind of scheme you want to run with Will Johnson, he can operate it. Put him on the other side of Trayvon Diggs, and you have one of the best cornerback duos in the National Football League. Number 13, we got Tyler Booker. This is extremely high for a guard, in my opinion, and Miami is certainly a team that doesn't value offensive line, but maybe, that kind of philosophy might change after this past year where their offensive line was just so bad. Tyler Booker is a really good interior lineman out of Alabama. I think that this is a little bit rich for an offensive guard of Booker's caliber, who's still very good, but you have to be like special to go in the top 15 at this particular position. So I think this one is a little bit of a reach. But then number 14, I really like the fit between Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State, going to Indianapolis. You give Tyler Warren to Anthony Richardson, and that's kind of just like the last kind of piece that the Colts have been missing in their offensive weaponry. They got Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr. They drafted Adonai Mitchell last year, who I really like. Warren is a super special player. And if you draft him, Anthony Richardson officially has no more excuses heading into year 3. Then number 15, Mike Green, the edge rusher out of Marshall, had a phenomenal Senior Bowl week, ran over Josh Connerly Jr., who's probably going to be a first-round pick in his own right out of Oregon. And, as we know, Atlanta's been looking for that true number 1 edge rusher for a long time. They tried to get it with Matthew Judon last year. It didn't really work out. Mike Green could certainly fit inside Raheem Morris's 3-4 scheme as an outside linebacker. Then number 16, Shamar Stewart, the defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. Shamar's very athletic for a bigger body, so he could play true 4-3 defensive end. Showed off a lot of great get-off in Mobile at the Senior Bowl this year, so he could certainly play on the interior as a 5 technique, but he could also play on the edge, which is where I think he wants to play. I think in Arizona, though, they run a 3-4 scheme there. I think he would play probably 5 technique, but then when they go to their nickel sets and their 4 down sets, I think that he would be a defensive end. Then you get to Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. super freaky athletic pass rusher here. He's a little bit lighter, but he's got very violent hands, and he can move very, very quickly off the snap. So Cincinnati looking to get better on the defensive side of the ball. Offense isn't the issue for them. It is defense. Walter Nolan could be an impact player for them if they draft him here at 17. Then Armin Membu, the offensive tackle out of Missouri, had to opt out of the Senior Bowl, unfortunately, this year, but he is somebody at right tackle that is a really, really good player. So if you're Seattle, you're looking for a right tackle of the future to pair with Charles Cross. I think Membu is somebody that is certainly good enough to fill that role from day one in the National Football League there in Seattle. Then number 19, James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee. Super long arms, very athletic. I mean, the early portions of the process here during the NFL season, there's a lot of people that were saying James Pierce Jr. was the number one player in this entire class. So for Tampa Bay to get him here at number 19, somebody that could be a potential number one superstar edge rusher, I think it's a slam dunk pick for the Buccaneers, who could use some help along the edge. The number 20, this is where Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State goes, and he goes to pair with Bo Nix, Sean Payton, and the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are in desperate need of some running back help, and if he falls here to number 20, I do think that he could certainly be taken by the Broncos right here. He would immediately pair well, I think, in Sean Payton's offense. He can be the Alvin Kamara type player in this offense, and it could take some of the load off of Bo Nix, who had just about as many pass attempts as anybody in football last season. But then you get to number 21 here, and this might be my least favorite pick because I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, guys. A lot of you guys know that watching the show. I hate this pick of Jackson Dart for the Pittsburgh Steelers, quarterback out of Ole Miss. I do not have a first-round grade on Dart, and I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that's trying to win now, and if you go ahead and do the same exact thing you did with Kenny Pickett a couple of years back, and you draft a player and you kind of reach on a player that really doesn't deserve to be taken in the first round, with all due respect to Jackson Dart, in my opinion, I think that would be a massive mistake, and I think that it probably limits their chances of getting their team captain, Cam Hayward, a ring before he retires in 2 years. So I really don't think this would be a good idea for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need somebody that can help them win right now. So running back, wide receiver, defensive line, corner, one of those positions, but definitely not quarterback. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Will a third quarterback be taken in round one of the draft this year? And if so, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Jalen Milroe? Would it be Jackson Dart? Would it be somebody else? Let me know down there in the comment section. Will 3 QBs be taken on day one? And if so, who's going to be the third guy in? Then we get to number 22, Colson Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Really well-rounded tight end, and obviously, Harbaugh's going to love him, right? So I actually love this fit. They're in need of a tight end, in my opinion, a true number one guy for Justin Herbert. A safety blanket type guy. Loveland can immediately fill that role for Herbert. Then you get to Maxwell Hairston, number 23, ready-made number 2 corner, in my opinion. Long arms, really physical. There's a lot of teams that are going to love Hairston because of his NFL readiness. I think he can come in right away. He's going to be a really, really good player for that Green Bay Packers defense alongside Jair Alexander. Then Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon, goes number 24 in Field Yates' latest mock draft here. Harmon's a very good player. Maybe I think this might be a little bit of a reach for Harmon, but don't get me wrong, guys. The Minnesota Vikings could use some defensive interior help, and Harmon can definitely provide that. The number 25, I don't like this pick whatsoever because I love Luther Burden III, guys. And we're going to talk a lot about Luther Burden throughout this draft process here on this channel and on this show. But Luther Burden III is absolutely insane, and I think he should be a top 15 pick in this year's NFL draft class. So for him to fall all the way to number 25, I just think is absolutely ridiculous. And the case for Luther Burden III to be going down this far is because the production went down a little bit this year, but the quarterback play was terrible in Missouri. When you look at Burden's film, it's just as good as it was in 2023. It's just the quarterback play wasn't on the same level. So today, I'm going to make Luther Burden III out of Missouri my Sperry Psycho of the Day. And the reason why I'm making him my Psycho of the Day, guys, is because when I watch him, he's the closest thing I have seen to Malik Neighbors in terms of that type of wide receiver. The ability to get open, and then not only the ability to get open, but to be tough over the middle of the field, make incredible catches with great body control, and then what really makes him special, guys, is the change of direction, the acceleration, and then the playmaking instincts out in space. You just don't see players move this way in the open field. You can get him the ball on screens and on jet sweeps and all these different things. He's going to make guys miss out in open space, and he's going to have the long speed to take it to the house. So I think Luther Burden III not only is a complete wide receiver because he's got the route running chops, all that great stuff, but his elite change of direction, his elite acceleration, and his elite playmaking instincts make him a potential super weapon for any team that drafts him, most likely in the top 15 of the NFL draft this year. So for me, guys, he is my psycho of the day. Then we get to number 26. We talked about Josh Conerly Jr. earlier in the show, and we talked about Mike Green running him over at the Senior Bowl. But Field Yates has him going to the Los Angeles Rams at number 26. Conerly can play on the left or right side, so that's going to be something that teams really cherish. And I think that LA certainly could use another offensive tackle with Alaric Jackson slated to hit free agency this year. The number 27, goodness gracious, the rich get richer at this position. The Baltimore Ravens taking Malachi Starks to pair with Kyle frickin' Hamilton. I mean, that's the best safety duo in the National Football League from day one, in my opinion. Starks is phenomenal. He can play a bevy of different positions. Free safety, if you want to put him in the box, he can. And then he can play in the slot, kind of like Tyke Smith last year, who I loved. But Malachi Starks is just taking it to a whole nother level. Can make incredible catches, really good ball skills, and then his coverage ability is something of legend. So I really like Malachi Starks as a player. He's one of my favorite players in this entire draft class, and the Ravens would be getting an absolute steal if he falls here to number 27. The number 28, another winner of the Senior Bowl, Gray Zabel out of NDSU, had a phenomenal Senior Bowl week because he dominated everywhere that he played. Whether he played offensive tackle, guard, or center, he was fantastic. And of course, this is a Detroit Lions team and organization that really values offensive line play. And if they get a guy of this caliber that can play tackle, guard, or center, have that versatility, that's going to make this unit even better moving forward. I love this pick here for Gray Zabel to the Detroit Lions. Then you get to Emeka Egbuka, the Ohio State wide receiver, number 29 overall, going to the Washington Commanders to pair with Terry McLaurin and, of course, Jaden Daniels. I like this fit quite a bit because Egbuka can play in the slot. He can play outside. I do think he can play out there. He reminds me a little bit of another Ohio State wide receiver, actually, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Guys that are mainly slot guys, but really good route runners, really good after the catch, very crafty players. Maybe they don't have the best long speed in the world, but their change of direction is phenomenal. Their technique in their route running is great. I think that Egbuka would be an absolute steal for Washington if he makes it to number 29. Then Kenneth Grant, the 340-pound athletic freak out of Michigan, going to the Buffalo Bills here at number 30. And what's the knock on the Bills defense, guys? They can't stop the run. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the run. Kenneth Grant will help you stop the run, guys. 340 pounds. He's been telling people at Shrine Bowl week a couple weeks ago that he's going to run a 4.8 at that size. So he's an absolute freak of nature at 340 pounds, and he plays the run better than just about anybody in this class. So that would be a phenomenal pick, in my opinion, if you are the Buffalo Bills and you are a Bills fan. Number 31, we got Donovan Jackson, the offensive lineman out of Ohio State. Probably going to play guard in the National Football League, but as we saw in the Super Bowl, guys, Kansas City needs offensive line help if they're going to take down the Philadelphia Eagles, say if they match up again in Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco next year. If Mahomes and the Chiefs want to return the glory and get another Lombardi trophy, they got to get better on the offensive line. Taking Donovan Jackson can help them do that. Then the final pick of this mock draft from ESPN's Field Yates goes to Jahad Campbell, the inside linebacker out of Alabama. Was Zach Bond slated to be a free agent? Is he going to come back? Is he not? You don't really know the questions to that. You will get Nakobe Dean back, but Jahad Campbell is certainly somebody that could come in and fill the role of what Zach Bond did in Philadelphia this year. Now, Bond was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. It's really, really hard to replace that with a rookie, especially at this position at inside linebacker, which is very, very difficult to play at the NFL level. But Campbell is a well-coached, very polished player that can cover out in space, coming out of Alabama. So if you have to replace Zach Bond there in Philly, I like the fit with Jahad Campbell. All right, guys, that'll be it for today's edition of NFL Draft by Chat Sports. Again, make sure you give me a follow on X for more draft analysis every single day. Really do appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already for more draft videos every single day from us here at Chat Sports. Until next time, guys, peace out.